Do you know how many hours I need to work at this time of my life to make an extra $500-$600? Like 20 hours. This house is going to work for me.
Today is going to be a really good conversation. I'm joined today by Kris Krohn, of course, but also we have Dolph DeRoos in the house.
The legend, the one, the only, literally the king of commercial real estate all around the world. 23 books, was at one point Robert Kiyosaki's financial advisor, New York Times bestseller. I mean, wow, this is, I don't even know what we're talking about today, Carson, but with Dolph here, it's going to be good.
It's my pleasure to be here, guys. I'm happy.
It is an honor to be sitting next to you and learning from both of you, but I've got a really interesting question. Kris, can I be one of your TikTok followers for just a second?
Okay.
Okay. You're going to recognize this real quick.
Okay.
But Kris, if you're making so much money, why are you still working?
Okay. Yes. I do recognize this one. This is every 100th person.
If you said you're retired, why are you still making YouTube videos? Can we talk about this a little bit?
Well, first of all, my response is, when did you learn to mistrust yourself? Like, what happened and what haven't you gotten over? Because Dolph, how many times have you been scammed in your life, right?
Oh, I don't want to even think about it too much. It's horrific.
I know. And by the way, the Dolph DeRoos being scammed, but I think that you and we become who we are because we know what it's like to have the bus run over us, come around the corner, hit us again, back up over us. And I don't know, you lose money enough times and you do one of two things. You either get sour and pessimistic, or you learn the lesson and you get smarter.
Right.
So, but what I really wanted to talk about, what that question is diving at is why aren't you on a beach somewhere just chilling? Isn't that the goal, to make a lot of money and then sit on the beach for the rest of your life?
I love sitting on the beach for about a day. So and then after
is that how long it takes you? Come on, the longest. Dolph, all right, what's the longest?
2 days. 2 days. I've enjoyed it for 2 days. Look, I like beaches inherently, especially if you've got an interesting book to read or some interesting friends that you're hanging with. But the thought of spending your life at the beach, there's nothing worse than that. We need our minds to be creative, not our bodies to be in a beautiful location.
There's a study out there, and they've reproduced it over and over and over again. And it essentially shows that when you retire, within 5 years, you're dead. And it's this idea that I think that retirement is for people that haven't found their purpose. They haven't found mission. They haven't found something fulfilling. And for them, they classify work as work. I have this brother-in-law years ago who, was like, come on, Kris, what do you do for fun when you're not, doing business? I'm like, well, I mean.
Business is fun.
But business is how I play. He's like, yeah, but that's work. What do you do to unwind? What do you do for fun? And he couldn't fathom, at least at that time, having so much passion and joy in something that I don't know, work is a designation for people that don't like what they do.
Well, and Kris, I think that's where this comment comes from, is someone saying, I hate my job. I'm looking forward to the day I don't have to go into that job anymore. And they're projecting that on you, Dolph, because I've seen similar comments where it's like,
yeah, but
you're making so much money, why are you doing this?
I think they're sometimes projecting something different. If you're so successful, then why does it look like you're still hustling?
Right.
And I feel like I need to justify myself and say, I know how many months away I am from being a technical billionaire. And you know what? Who cares? I'm going to blow past that, and I want to be worth $100 billion. And frankly, I will probably spend my entire life making as much money as I possibly can and just giving it away because that's fun for me. The enjoyment of the creation of building it. And this doesn't mean that I live as a pauper, right? I mean, I have a beautiful life. I mean, I have a private jet, about to have 2 private jets. I'm saying it's not that I don't enjoy spending money on fun, but I'll tell you what I love spending money on. I love spending money on memories. We're going to fly later this year, my family, to the Galapagos, and we chartered a yacht. If you've never chartered a yacht before, it's usually a high 5 or a 6-figure endeavor, for a week. And we're going to get our own naturalist to basically show us around and check out, this whole endemic species of animals that you can only find that part of the world, just for the sake of school, right? That's knowledge education. I'm motivated to give my children, in this last decade of dreams before they're adults, these experiences. So that motivates me. But outside of that, materialism, it really doesn't serve any greater good than I already possess than either creating memories or just giving it away.
So Dolph, let me ask you this. I want to dispel some of the myths about retirement. How old were you when you first made so much money that you could have just sat on a beach?
Gosh, I mean, my perception of what constituted a lot of money changed over the years, of course. But I think I was 24 years old and I thought, man, I could just sit back and do nothing. No, I didn't have many expenses then. But I soon found out that even back then, that was boring.
Really?
We need to keep our minds occupied. We need to do things that stimulate our thinking.
Well, and I also think, Dolph, that there's the destination and there's the journey. And who you become in the process of arriving at a destination is who you will be when you get there. And so this idea of, well, I'm going to choose a career that I don't like, but I'm going to do it because I can save good money and I'm just going to work and hate it. But don't worry, eventually there will be a reward. And I'm like, well, who are you going to be by the time you get your reward?
Right.
Will you look in the mirror and love the person that you become? Will you actually be able to, quote unquote, retire and stop working? And I think sometimes we forget that there's a strong parallel between the journey and the destination, and that they're hugely linked to each other. It's not like from one day to the next, you just stop being one person and become a different one.
That's true. And if you were someone else and you met your true self, what would your impression be? Like, this is a cool dude, or this is a mean, stingy person, or selfish?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's not how much you amass, but it's what you can give. And that's what it boils down to.
Come on,
really.
Dolph, are you just being altruistic right now? Like, I want you to, for real, because I know your heart, but they may not. Like,
Right.
Will you actually qualify? Are you just a goody two-shoe, or what do you actually mean by this contribution and giving?
Well, again, it's another layer to that, Kris. It's a great question, because when it comes to giving, it's not just giving material things. You might say, well, if you want to give me some money. I need some money. I don't think even giving materialistic things is a good thing to give, because it sets people up to think, well, if I ask the right people, I'll just get it and I won't have to work for it.
Yeah.
It's whether you give them information that they can use to turn into something that they can create something with.
It's part of that journey.
It's part of that journey.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was watching a movie on Netflix, and it basically had this popular Hollywood actor meeting a younger version of himself through time travel. And he was looking at that kid with disgust who always got beat up. And at one point, the kid that kept getting beat up talked to his older self and says, "Why don't you jump in and help me here?" And he says, "Because how else are you going to learn?"
Right.
And he was quite a bad A, like as an adult now. And it was all of his trauma that helped create the person he became. And I think trauma is going to be associated with life, right? It's not just pain, it's the suffering from going through horrible things. And I think, like everything in life, those things can be consecrated with life lessons to make you so strong that your mess becomes your message, or you get lost in the weeds and never figure it out and become one of these people that ask these kind of questions like, I don't get you.
Kris, were you watching Disney's The Kid?
No, it was not that movie.
Are you sure? Because it sounds a lot like that plot. Why do I do this all the time? So, Dolph, what do you say to someone that's just holding their breath for retirement? And then, Kris, come to you for the same question. What do you say to someone that's just like, I'm just going to do this job and one day I'll retire?
Well, Kris has already answered that. Most people within a few years of retiring, they fade out, they pass away, they die. So it's not about the retirement. And that's why I set out to never, ever retire. And I can't retire. It is technically impossible for me to retire.
You set out to never retire.
Well, I've never had a job. You retire from a job, and I've never had a job, so I've got nothing to retire from. I'm doomed to never retire. And you could say, well, my life is one big long holiday or vacation. Because even when I do what I do every day, like recording videos, to me, that's fun.
So how do you set up your life so that you don't have a job and therefore never have a need to retire?
I
How do you
fell
do that?
into it. I mean, I spent years at university. They say there are three kinds of student: part-time, full-time, and eternal. I was the eternal kind. I spent 8 years at university. I got a PhD in electrical engineering, not the easiest subject around.
Yeah.
And I confess I went to 2 job interviews because I was still in this mindset of, I better get a job. That's why I studied for so long. And at the end of my second interview, I was offered a salary of $32,000 a year, which back then, I know it's a long time ago, back then that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, from my prospective employer, and with the benefit of hindsight, fortunately for me, the week before, I completed a real estate deal that netted me $35,000. And I remember thinking, why would anyone in his or her right mind work for 40 hours a week, 50 weeks of the year, for a boss turning up every morning saying, what do you want me to do for you today?
I had a very, very similar experience, because on my very first house I bought, I remember that the moment I bought it, never even moved in or did anything with it.
Right.
Just the moment I bought it with more equity just by signing my name 100 times.
Right.
than I made in an entire year.
Exactly.
Almost by double. And by the way, when I moved in and I rented out the basement, I lived for free. So I knocked out my number one expense, and I'm like, dude, what is?
Why would you not do this?
Yeah, well, and on a deal back then, I was sometimes clearing $500 or $600 a month of cash flow, and I was thinking, you know how many hours I need to work at this time of my life to make an extra $500, $600? Like 20 hours. This house is going to work for me. And I just loved that. And it was just like, why should I go to work if other inanimate objects will go to work for me?
Right. And I didn't come from a family environment that encouraged this. In fact, this is hard to believe. I was 35 years old and visiting my parents in Europe, and they picked me up from the airport, and my mother said, you know, Dolph, it's not too late. And I looked at my watch thinking, not too late for what? Dinner with an aunt or something. I said, for what? And she said, to get a job. I said, why would I want a job? Yes. And she said, because you don't have a pension, which is European speak for a 401k or an IRA or something. And I said, I don't need a pension. My real estate's my pension.
Can I tell you what was so disgruntling for me is, I had this college job, and while I was trying to get a degree so that I could quote unquote make more money, it became very discouraging when I started having this telemarketing job, talking to people that had been to college 30 years earlier. And they all kind of had the same thing in common. These people were excellent savers. It seemed to me that they were not even vacationing once a year. They were so good at 401k and IRA. And later I learned this phrase. It's called a money disorder. And there's actually a psychological designation. It's a disorder for people that are so good at saving that they're not living, and they're pinching so many pennies that they can't create memories.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that you have to have money to make memories, but for the most part, people, the better they are at saving, the longer they go saving, my experience is the more negative minded they tend to become, because there's a certain amount of fun we need in life to enjoy life. And so they're setting aside their fun for maybe future down the road for a someday that may never, and I find usually never comes. But pessimism then turns into something worse, and eventually into crotchetiness. And I find that these individuals, by the time they're in their 50s, they're unrecoverable. By their 60s, they have forfeited their last productive working years, and now they're doomed, which means that whatever they've saved, which on average, is a couple $100,000. And for someone who is a mega saver, maybe they've saved $1 million. But then they meet with their financial planner, and you know what they say? Oh, well, if you don't want to lose the principal because modern medicine's going to keep you around, you got to live off the interest. Well, what's the maximum amount of interest I can get on $1 million? Like, I'm a millionaire. Well, 3%, $30,000 a year. Wait, that's $2,600 a month. You're telling me that I'm accustomed to living off of $60,000, $80,000, or $90,000 a year, because at 54, we'll hit our peak earning. And our peak earnings put us at just under $100,000 a year.
So they still can't take that vacation.
They still can't take the vacation because so now they're doomed to the next whatever decades. And by the way, that's not going to lengthen your life, being a negative, crotchety person that isn't enjoying life. So now they've lost their time to travel. They've lost their prime. They've lost their ability to work and compete in the marketplace. And they have to find a way to just get by with a scratch of what they're accustomed to.
But Kris, on top of that annuity, they have Social Security.
Sure, go ahead. Throw in a couple grand there. Yes, I'm rich. We're not going to get into the stupid debate of will it even be here when I'm old. I mean,
oh no,
we'll keep going into debt. We'll keep printing more money, and we'll keep hurting inflation or adding to it.
But Carson, I get variations of that question. They'll say things like, Dolph, if you're doing as well as you want us to believe that possibly you're doing, why do you still go and speak for a fee in Asia?
Yeah.
And I guess it's a valid question, but here's my take on it. Firstly, I said a moment ago, part of the joy is not having material things, but helping other people. So I get paid to get on a plane and fly in the front of the plane to go to an exotic location, Hanoi or Bangkok or something, and I get to speak on stage for 4 or 5 hours with people who are eager to learn. And then I eat the local food and I sample the local culture. I go and see all the sites there. I've been to Vietnam or Thailand, I don't know, dozens of times. I enjoy it there. I've got a great set of friends there, and I'm leading this lifestyle, and they pay me to do it, to boot, and they take me out to dinner, and they take me on sightseeing. And then other people think I should complain about that because I'm working. To me, that's not even work.
Yeah.
What a blessed life.
Yeah. It's, we've got this horrible thing happening between Russia and Ukraine, and Putin has made a really big, bold move. And right now in my life, I'm putting up some money. I'm raising some money. We're taking a private jet 2 months from now to Poland, and we're going to be delivering. Right now, we're securing all sorts of very valuable medical supplies from hospitals around the country through my director of my foundation. I'm going to be able to bring my wife and a couple of my kids to the safe parts of this mission, where they get to be there to help distribute the supplies and really help with the impact. And then we're also working with some ex-military who've created some safe, secure routes into the Ukraine, where we're going to be able to do some rescue missions. Right now, sex slave trade is up through the roof in a scenario like that. You've got all sorts of people trapped behind enemy lines that can't get to safety. And I look at that and I'm like, what a privilege to be able to organize it. Even if I wasn't going, what a privilege to be able to put that together and be behind something. Because, listen, we live in a world where there's a lot of social injustice and there's a lot of problems, and we, Dolph, don't have to solve all of them. But I do believe that if you're privileged, that you should solve what you can. And so our foundation this year is making that one of our core focuses. And I know that my children and my wife and I, we're not going to come out of that the same people. And every time I do some of this humanitarian work, for me personally, it grows my heart. I'm not going to lie. There used to be a very, very selfish Kris Krohn that wanted the mansion and wanted the cars and has had these things. And I felt significance and I felt ego thriving from it. And it felt good to achieve. And those things used to honestly be powerful motivators for me. But today it's like, okay, let's be honest. You really have everything. Anytime I want something, I just get it. Mm-hmm. It means that Christmas and birthdays, I don't look forward to presents anymore, because if I want something, you
just get it. You don't need to wait for a present.
Yeah, which means that the sentimentality and the emotionality behind it changes. And Tony Robbins, who was a mentor of mine for a few years, I know you've spoken on a stage many a time. He has this saying. He says that we're really driven initially out of our ego for significance or security. We want one of these two things. We either want to feel safe and secure, which is why people set aside money and squirrel it away, or they have this need to feel like they were important. And you can be significant for good reasons, or Osama bin Laden bad reasons. And ultimately, he says that you have to transcend those needs because they're shallow and they don't create long-term fulfillment. And what you upgrade them for, and beyond even love and connection, is you upgrade them for contribution and growth. It turns out, and this has been very true for me now, that if I'm not growing, I'm retracting, I'm dying. And so I'm looking for, well, how do I grow? How do I grow a stronger body? How do I grow my mind by learning more? How do I get more mentors? Right now I have a dozen mentors. I've never had this many in my life at once. I've got personal trainers and coaches, and I'm doing a physique competition in a couple of weeks here. And I'm just having fun exerting all of this effort because I'm enjoying the game of growth and then the game of contribution. And I've been transforming myself over the last decade to make those the hallmarks, because at some point, there's no amount of stuff or instant gratification that will ever replace the deeper merits. What really you get out of fulfillment that can't be bought. It's a thing that's earned from choices that you make. And so, I hope anyone listening to this message today is like, wait a second, you're saying that there's more in store for me if I'll pursue contribution. There's more in store for me if I pursue my personal growth. And so it's, why are you still in the game? Why are you in the game? Well, I already know this about you. You love to make deeper and deeper contribution, and you love impact, but you also love growing, which always makes you a fascinating friend to spend time with, because you're always up to something that inspires me. That's what good mentors do.
Well, that's very kind of you to say, and it's nice to hear. You mentioned a word there which I think is really, really crucial to this whole process. It's not just contribution. We need to get this feeling that we're growing, that we're learning something new.
Yeah.
And if you fall into a lot of money, if you inherit a lot of money and you just give it away, you're contributing, but it doesn't feel the same as when you're giving something away that you've created using your brain power.
I agree.
And that is the crucial thing. That is why a lot of rich kids end up not being fulfilled, because they didn't earn it. They don't know the value of money. They know the price of everything, but not the value of it.
Oh, that's so interesting. So what we're talking about here really is the difference between the science of success and the art of fulfillment. And it's an art because it's not the same recipe that works for everyone. So speaking to those listening who are maybe having a mind shift and saying, maybe retirement isn't what I should be holding out for, how do you find the thing that fulfills you, that makes you say, screw retirement, I just want to keep doing that thing that I love?
When I was in college, I knew that there wasn't a degree that I was going to get that was going to satisfy me. So I ended up getting a degree which was also my wife's same degree on parenthood. It was called family development. It was all about how humans develop. And I had a chance to study some of today's founding fathers of this notion of the psychology of happiness. And one of those talks about the stages of life that we go through. And there's a final stage before you die. And in that stage, when you're done with your working years, you develop this huge desire inside to contribute and to give back to the previous generation to make them smarter, wiser, stronger. And that can be for some people literally giving wealth. It can be giving your time. It can be giving your talents. It can be passing on skills. And there's so much, like, the end of life is defined by your ability to pass value on. And that, I think, is what's going to be true for all of us. That is our most recent understanding of what will allow you to get on that deathbed and say, I had it all. I lived fully. I lived a complete life. So I have a belief that I'm obsessed with, and the belief is be early. So just like you were 24 when you were quote unquote retired, I was 26. And that was because I didn't want to do it when I was 65. I just said, let's just get it done with early. Right. And I found great value in being early. So I look at the stages of life. For example, I knew I'm going to have kids. So what kind of dad do I want to be? Well, now I have 2 teenagers, and I've got, my youngest is 10 and my oldest is 16. And my 16-year-old just got her license. And I recognize that my world will be filled with regret as a dad if I don't spend enough time with them during these formative years. And so, every week we take the jet somewhere in the world. Yesterday it was San Diego, and we go create memories as a family once a week. It's just a full day. We call it school. That's what we tell our children. We bring our private teacher, but really, there was this moment when I was in the waves with my daughter, and we were boogie boarding next to her former teacher that we were visiting. And we were just out there floating, waiting for the next wave and just talking about what mattered most in life. And there was this really beautiful moment where we really connected. And I thought, like, for this season of my life, that's what I need for her and for me, so that when she hopefully reflects as an adult, she'll say, wow, my dad, sure, he worked a lot, and he was, he's well sought after in these things, and he authored these books, and he had all these clubs and things that he ran and did. But I've got many memories with my dad who was there for me, because in this season, I need to have enough time with my children so that I can look back and say, I crushed this phase of life. Well, the final phase is how you gave back to the previous generation. And
how you gave time. Time is even more important than money, because we can give our kids by giving them things, material things, but you hit on it. You're blessed with 4. I only have 1 child. But looking back, the best thing that I believe I ever gave her is just time. Spending time with her, listening to her stories, telling her stories. And we would go and visit my mother, who lives in Malta, and instead of flying there directly, you can go nonstop to London and London, Malta. We'd pick a city in Europe at random and then make our way overland without reservations, bookings, plans, itineraries. And it was some of the best times we ever had, because every day was an adventure. And if we liked a place and the weather was good, we'd say, hey, should we stay another night? And if we'd seen it and it started to rain, we'd move on. And not knowing what would happen, I think that is worth more than giving money.
Yeah.
I really think giving money is one of the worst things we can do. In fact, many people say, well, you must have given your daughter a lot of real estate, and I haven't. To this day, I haven't. And she's studying at university, doing business entrepreneurship. She took an internship with a fashion company. She wants to have her own fashion line. And during that working period, last summer vacation, she said, Dad, this working really sucks. It's hard work. I now want passive income. She said, I can't believe I went to all those events with you, and I made her work on the logistics team, and I couldn't figure out why people would pay you money to listen to you, and I could just hear you any time of the day or of the week. But I realized now I should have listened. I want passive income. Help me. What can I do to get my first property? Now she's motivated.
Yeah, when the student is ready.
Given it to her without the motivation, she wouldn't have valued it.
I know. That's actually one of the things that I've learned, is that I don't want anything for my children except to help them discover who they are and what their purpose is, because I'm not expecting any of them to follow into my footsteps. I start a new business every day.
Exactly.
Like, I'm building this crazy, crazy empire, and I'm doing me.
Right.
And all I want is for them to do them.
Exactly.
And show up and be there at the rate that they're ready to receive. Because when the student is ready, they say the teacher,
the teacher will appear. A teacher will appear. It may not be you and I.
I know, but I am hoping, by the way, I make a lot of teachers available, because Dad right now doesn't have a lot of credibility with that age group a little bit sometimes.
Of course not, no.
No, but I'm like, when the child is ready, I hope the parent will be ready. And so you got to make yourself available. So I'm obsessed with the art of how do you live the most fulfilling life. I'm obsessed with just studying what really does make happy. Because I think, Dolph, you and I, we've had the opportunity and the privilege of transcending a lot of human struggle that is only there by option for those that don't learn how to overcome it. I know that you've made incredible study of the game of money so that you can arbitrage it very well. But you've made a study of a lot of other great things. I've made a study for me of overcoming limiting beliefs. Spent a couple $1 million and brought all these mentors in to say, hey, anytime I'm emotionally unhappy, I need to have a way of pulling out of it and then creating a permanent operating system change so that I don't fall in the pattern. And I dedicated a decade of my life to that. It was one of the most valuable things I've ever done because with or without money, I know how to be happy now, right? And so I think I'm hoping as people listen to today's message, they'll ask themselves, what should I be studying? Not career, not like, what should I be studying that will allow me to get educated on the kind of choices that will allow me to live a really happy, fruitful, successful, fulfilling life?
Okay, this is great. And Kris, we have our guest here, Dolph, with us. So I'd like to give Dolph the last words on the topic. Dispelling the myths around retirement, what is actual fulfillment? What's the final thing that you would leave with our listeners?
So the end game is if you can put your head down on your pillow at night and say, wow, today was a blast and I'm looking forward to tomorrow, then it's been a successful day. Because when you achieve that, when you can genuinely feel that as your head goes on your pillow and you're falling into a blissful sleep pretty quickly because you've got nothing on your mind that is working on your conscience that keeps you awake, then you're doing things right. And to achieve that, I believe we need to go beyond our comfort zones. We need to read books and read more books. We're not reading books anymore. Book readership has been decimated. You can get a lifetime's experience of someone who writes an autobiography in 3 hours and $30. You can get the condensed version of his entire life in 3 hours by reading it. And if you're a slow reader, it's 6 hours. So what? You can get that. Read more books and learn about things that you're not sure that you want to know about because you don't know if you want to learn about them until you've learned about them. And if it's a topic you don't like, read a different one next time. But if you like it, read more. Discover what makes other people tick. The more we understand about this world, the more we can figure out where we fit into it, where we have joy, where we can contribute joy. After a while, it's not about putting a smile on your own face because that's cool. But when you can put a smile on someone else's face, especially if it's a stranger, there's that saying, true valor is to do without witness what you do in front of millions. If you can make a stranger smile and change his life forever, and he may not even know who it was that made that change, that is real fulfillment. You sleep well when you do that. And, you always get the smart aleck come because, well, then make the next course free. Well, it's a funny thing. I do events at $20 a head, and I do some at $2,000 a head, and some, as you all know, for a lot more than that. And the difference between the two is that when it's only $20 a head, people complain about the strength of the tea or the temperature of the coffee. And when it's $2,000 a head, they don't care about the tea or coffee. They want to learn how to make their $2,000 back. And when you charge $50,000 a head, they already know they're going to make it back. That's why they're there. So get to the point where you know that you'll get a return on your money and you don't have to complain about the strength of the tea or the temperature of the coffee. And you guys are already doing that. And now you're contributing to the world. You're elevating the world, and we need more of that. So that it's great what you're doing. I want to see how I can help with what you're doing over in Poland. But we want to get to the point where we don't need to do that because the world's been elevated. And I think we're closer, but we're still a long way from it, as is evidenced by what's happening. So I take my hat off to you for what you're doing, that initiative you're taking, let alone the people that you're helping. But I think if we can get more people thinking this way instead of what's in it for me, I think we can slowly have a valuable shift in the world for all of mankind.
Dolph does deserve, with those remarks, the final statement, but I just need to build one more idea, Carson. We're either living a selfish life or a selfless life. And when I say selfish, there's a lot of sticky factor and judgment and shame and guilt on that. But what I really mean is more of like just a technical, is what you're doing for you and your family, or is what you're doing for others beyond that? And as long as you struggle financially, you'll always be playing a game where your time will be obsessed with how you take care of your own. And so obviously there's a level of nobility in that. I believe that if we can, Dolph, pursue the kind of books and events where we can master the game of money, because it's a game. It doesn't require, I'm amazed at the type of people that are able to win this game. I don't think that some are more intelligent than other people. I don't think that other people are more handsome or beautiful than other people. I feel like that the prize simply gets rewarded to the person that was able to study it, master it. And it's a game, which means if you play by the rules, you can win. And so, I think my last comment on this idea is, instead of just being a student of technical training that can help you have a good career, become a student of life, become a student of what brings you joy and happiness. That's what I hear Dolph saying. And I'm also adding, be a student of money, because you can only be a wise steward of something that you understand. So if you are going to spend this much of your time working and gathering resources, then you can either develop a money disorder and use it inappropriately, or you can learn how to invest it intelligently and take someone like Dolph DeRoos and take everything away from him. And it won't take him many months before he's a multimillionaire, absolutely killing it financially, because he knows the game. He knows how to play it. I know how to play the game. So make a study of the game of money so that you get so good at it that you can outproduce your own selfish needs. You can transcend what you need, or even what your family needs, or your loved ones beyond that extended family, and start producing money for strangers and people that you don't know. Only then do you traverse into a selfless life. And so my experience is that if you can learn how to be a wise steward over making money, you'll become a better steward of your own time management. So you can give the gift of whether it is a resource or whether it is time, but either way, it's going to be the selfless part of you that has grown into that individual that will be a happier, more fulfilled version of you than the one that is stuck just trying to figure out how to pay bills.
Well said. Well said. And it's not just become a student of money. It's become a student of happiness. We have cliches that form our minds. We think money can't buy you happiness, and to a certain extent is true. And money doesn't grow on trees, and to a certain extent is true. But if you believe those things, then if money doesn't grow on trees, we have to work hard for it. And if money can't buy you happiness, then if you have money, you're going to be unhappy. And we can negate those things because it's perfectly feasible and possible to be happy with money. And you can have money grow on trees. If you invest wisely by studying money, you'll have passive income. And that's what it's all about. Just be open to new ideas.